welcome to the Badass Breastfeeding Podcast. This is Dianne, your lactation consultant.
And this is Abby, the Badass Breastfeeder. And today's episode is brought to you by Larkin. Larkin is a mom-owned line of game-changing maternity and postpartum essentials. And today's episode is also brought to you by Rumble Tough. The Rumble Tough Breeze is a top-of-the-line breast pump with a rechargeable battery that fits in the palm of your hand. And we will hear more from our sponsors later, but these sponsors make this podcast possible. So if you need anything, please head over to badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com. Check out our sponsor page and see if you can give them any of your business. While you're there, scroll down, enter your email address, and we'll send episodes straight to your inbox every week. And check out our shop page for merchandise designs by me and Dianne. Dianne and I. Dianne and me, I think is how you would grammatically correctly in that sentence. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You put me at the end instead of I if it's the end of the sentence.
Oh.
Right?
Jeez. Oh, I learned even about grammar today, everybody. It's been a long time since I've been in school.
Sometimes I fix Josh's grammar, and he is a freaking proofreader for like a giant company.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, dude, what the hell? Anyway. We're also on Patreon, and we would love to have you there enjoying our exclusive content, which does not include my dog scratching at the door, but it does include our mini podcasts, extra ad-free episodes, and live Q&As. You can check out the benefits of each tier at Badass Breastfeeding Podcast Patreon by clicking the link at the very top of the show notes under the episode that you are listening to right now. You can also find the link at badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com if that is confusing to you. We are very excited to be able to interact more closely with you there. And you guys have heard me list every single patron since we started this. And we decided that we would just shout out to the new people so that you're not listening to our list every week and that it doesn't get super long and I don't know. People get more of an individual highlight. So I will just review from the last week who came in. We have Haley N, Kelly H, Amanda M, Madeline M, and Stephanie S. Welcome, badasses, to Patreon. And we're still hosting our ongoing giveaway. If you leave a review anywhere on the internet, send us a screenshot along with your address to badassbreastfeedingpodcast@gmail.com, and we will send you a goodie bag of stickers and thank you for nursing in public cards. And Dianne has our review of the week.
Yes. Oh my gosh, this review is beyond overdue. I truly can't appreciate the both of you enough. You both have been a beacon for me during an emotional and yet amazing journey during the first 10 months of having my son. The most rewarding piece of wisdom y'all gave me was when you described a newborn as an animal with instincts that made you scared of outside predictors. You said your baby doesn't know we have alarm systems or security and that it's year 2023.
Oh, outside predators.
Oh, yep, absolutely. My dog agrees. Instead, that your baby needs to feel safe and protected. That advice sounds simple, but changed the entire type of parenting style I chose to be. Instead of being cold and negative and unaffectionate, it explained to me the importance and simple instincts of a newborn baby feels. # babies can't manipulate. Thank you, and I appreciate y'all both. That I think is amazing.
That's so awesome.
What did it? Like, because it's true. And we say that. And I always sometimes feel silly telling people like babies are totally primal. They have no idea where we are. And I remember when a lactation consultant told me that, like, your baby doesn't know, babies don't know that it's, the year, whatever year it is, and that they're perfectly safe. They don't.
Yeah, they don't.
Just like they don't know what time it is. And when we say, oh, it's not time for a baby to eat yet, they don't know what time it is. They know they're hungry. Like, that's why we say feed on demand. But when we put it in that context, I think it is a lot easier to kind of go, oh my gosh, yeah, they really don't know.
Yeah, it's really much easier to understand where they're coming from.
Yeah. So I think
and then it's easier to parent in the way that you usually want to, or it makes sense to, yourself what's going on with you.
Yeah. And we should all go forward using # babies can't manipulate.
We should.
Yes.
I agree.
So thank you so much for that.
That's
I
awesome.
love it. Yeah. And we're going to talk about returning to work.
Oh,
which
yeah.
is,
Returning to work. That has been requested quite a lot, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think people have been like requesting that one. And I had a message, but now I can't find it. I'll read
Returning to
it.
work.
You can, yeah. Why don't we just start and I'll see if I can find it while we're talking.
I don't even know where to start with returning to work because it's such a thing, right?
I know. Well, that's so funny because I was thinking of this. I was like, is this even one episode? Because like you're talking about returning to work. It's like, that's such a huge thing. Like, are we talking about like how to gather breast milk? Are we talking about like, you know, how to balance breastfeeding and pumping throughout the day? Like, I feel like any of these topics could go on for 45 minutes.
And we do have a couple episodes coming up, like in the future. I put them on our list. And I know, Patreons are able to kind of like, go through our list and stuff like that and talk with us about things that they want to hear. But I do have some things coming up, or we do have some things coming up about like balancing breastfeeding and pumping and, dealing with care providers and stuff like that. But returning to work overall is such a huge piece of breastfeeding. And it's just such a huge piece of parenting, right? Because we go into pregnancy, like we're in pregnancy, we're pregnant with these babies. We're, moving along with our pregnancy, whatever. Nobody's thinking about what you're going to do after maternity leave ends. Nobody thinks about that until that baby's born. And then they go, oh shit, I don't want to go back to work.
Yeah. That's what happened to me.
Some people do, and that's great. Like, and we talked about this in, one of the recent episodes that we had somebody that, gave us a review that they were kind of offended that we said, 8 weeks was not long enough. And some people really do want to go back to work, and that is fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with somebody saying, this is my career. It's my identity. I want to go back. I'm looking forward to it. But you still have the logistics of pumping and returning to work and making all of that stuff balance.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's the hard part. I mean, It's hard to leave your baby, and nobody's saying it's easy. And even for those people who want to go back to work, it's still not easy to leave your baby.
No, it's not.
Like, those people aren't saying, oh, this is totally easy. I'm just going to like throw my baby at a
I love
caregiver.
leaving my baby. Nobody said that.
Like, nobody's saying that. But it is hard whether you want to go back or you don't want to go back. It is hard. And yeah, like Abby decided not to go back. Right? Like,
I decided not to go back. And I think that probably if I had more information, maybe it would have been different. I mean, maybe not. But like, I was just like, oh my God, I'm going to have to pump all this milk. Right now I'm pumping and I'm getting like drops of it. How's that going to happen? How am I going to fill my freezer with milk in order to go back? How am I going to, just the logistics of it. I just couldn't wrap my brain around it.
That's a lot. I had the benefit of not having to go back to work. And that is only because things happened to fall into place for me. But I think I had mentioned to people before, my first son was born in a different state, and we chose to come back home. He was only about 10 days old. We chose to come back home. We didn't have jobs coming back home. We stayed with my parents until we kind of got on our feet, but we had made the agreement that whatever we were going to do, like like I said, we were living at my parents' house. So my ex-husband got a job that could accommodate me, that would accommodate the kind of house we were going to get, that would accommodate, me being able to stay at home. But we had the ability to do that because we weren't like settled, so we settled ourselves around me not working. That's what we really did. And not a lot of people have that benefit. A lot of people are going into this. I didn't have a job. I didn't have a career. I had just come out of the Army. So I didn't have I'm missing this, this benefit of being with I didn't have any of that. So I wasn't missing it. So that is a very different situation. But there are people that, they have lives that they are they have cars. Like, we had one car, like we didn't have anything. And we just kind of built around that. But there are people that have, that are living a life based on two incomes. And
Yeah.
a lot of people can't not do that. Or you have health insurance based on that job.
Yeah.
So
that's a big thing too.
it's a huge thing. So you have to go back, whether you want to or not. And if you want to, it's still not easy. So I don't know if we're going to be able to really we're just kind of here in solidarity, you guys. Like, it's not like we've got these great answers for you, but we're going to talk about some of the things, and you're not alone, because I did find this really cool study that talked about factors influencing breastfeeding after returning to work. And it really is interesting. And they talked about different areas, different places. But some of the things that really impact how breastfeeding goes once you return to work. And it says, this is one of the things that I wanted to talk about. Interestingly, the guarantee of paid breastfeeding breaks for at least 6 months has been shown to be associated with an increase of nearly 9% in exclusive breastfeeding. Guess which country does not have paid breastfeeding breaks? The United States. We're one of the only countries that does not have paid breastfeeding breaks.
That's wild.
One of the only countries that doesn't have that. And it has been associated with an increase in breastfeeding rates. And I feel and I could be wrong, but I feel it's because you don't have to worry about it, right? It's one of the things that's kind of taken off your plate to be concerned about. When you're returning to work, you're worried about, okay, how is this going to work? How am I going to go and pump? Am I going to be paid to go and pump? Or do I have to make that up somewhere else? Or am I just going to lose money altogether by pumping? And if I'm going to lose money by pumping, what's the point? Right? What is the point? And I can't blame you if you're thinking that.
Yeah.
You're thinking, where am I going to put the milk? Where am I going to go to pump? Is there a place for me? Some workplaces have a place. Some do not. So all of that stuff plays into it. Managerial and organizational support increases exclusive breastfeeding duration nearly twofold, with coworker support being essential in the decision to continue breastfeeding. Lack of breastfeeding facilities, such as a room dedicated for breastfeeding or a fridge, is associated with breastfeeding discontinuation after returning to work. Even if some laws promote breastfeeding at work, such as the federal break time for nursing mothers law requiring employers covered by the Fair Labor Standards Act to provide basic accommodations for breastfeeding mothers at work in the USA, these laws are still not fully applied. Basically, what that's saying is that sometimes businesses are like, I don't care what the law says, we can't accommodate it. So you either don't do it or you find another job. And that's not okay.
Yeah.
That's a very real challenge for a lot of people.
Yeah. I found the message, by the way.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Okay. So I think that, hopefully we're going to get into some logistics, right? Okay. We'll just answer the question. So she says, I'm a special ed teacher and the sole provider with insurance right now. And I'm very anxious about returning back to work to the point that I start crying just thinking about it. While I'm lucky to get 3.5 months off with my baby, it still doesn't feel like long enough. And I just don't want to. With the commute to and from work and dropping the baby off at his sitter along the way, it will be close to 10 to 11 hours away from home. Can you do more episodes on returning to work and preparing for that? I'm worried that there will not be enough time in the day for bonding and sleeping, household chores, and self-care. I'm trying to come up with routines now, such as getting up at 5 a.m. each morning to get ready and breastfeed as long as I would going back to work. I'm also trying to establish a bedtime routine. And she goes on, this message involves multiple layers, but we can stop there. So yeah, I mean, I think for me, is similar to her, is just how in the world is all of this going to happen? And maybe we can help people we can tell people how it will happen because they're going to have to do it.
Yeah, they are. And a lot of it is going to depend on how old your baby is when you go back. I mean, if you're going back to work at 6 weeks or at 8 weeks, you're going to be dealing with more. You're going to be dealing with a baby that wakes up more during the night, most likely. You're going to be dealing with, pumping a little bit more, trying to pump more milk, opposed to a parent that goes back at 6 months. You know what I mean? Like there's a huge difference there. And a lot of times I will get parents that come to me and they're very, very concerned, or they come to me for a breastfeeding issue but they want to talk about the return to work as well, which is totally fine and expected. And it's like, okay, what we see your baby doing at 1 month is going to be totally different than what we see your baby doing at 12 weeks. So we need to really maybe revisit it. Like we can talk about it, but we're going to probably have to revisit it later on because it might be a completely different story. The anxiety piece, I don't even know. Do you have any words of wisdom about that? Because
I
that's
think
really
the anxiety
hard.
piece, the anxiety piece comes from not knowing and not knowing what to expect, not knowing what to do. And so I think telling people what to do. So you do not have to, let's start before you even go back to work. You don't have to have a freezer full of milk. Once you get to work, you are going to be pumping that day what you're going to be feeding the next day. If you want to be a couple of days ahead, fine. That's fine. But you don't need to have what you see on social media with people's oversupply filling the refrigerator. And start pumping before the day, don't start pumping the day before you have to go back to work.
Right.
Start the pumping earlier. Start getting used to your pump, changing the settings, messing with the settings, and seeing what helps get the most milk out. And start just saving it slowly. Start a couple of weeks in advance, practice a couple of times a day. You'll end up with, how much milk you need. And then when you're at work, you're going to pump every time that your baby would normally eat. Right? If your baby's nursing, if your baby usually nurses around noon, then you're going to want to pump around noon.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah. Every couple hours.
That's how to kind of gauge how much you're going to be pumping.
Yeah. Yes. I usually try to, I have a couple things I want to say. First of all, I saw a family the other day and mom was pumping like she had texted me and said that she was needed to talk about milk supply. She thought her milk supply was dying, which it's not, because when she pumped, she got I don't know, 4 ounces or something like that, 3 or 4 ounces. And I'm like, you have a good supply. And she was like, really? And the dad was there too. And he goes, but you see all those people on social media with all this, these fridges full, with milk. And I'm like, I question whether that's even human milk, honestly, sometimes. And I question if it's all of their milk. And maybe it absolutely is. But I also saw somebody the other day who told me that her and a colleague, her and a friend that she works with are both pumping at work. And she comes out with 8 ounces, as opposed to the 2 that, that the parent that I saw was getting. And of course she felt like, well, she's getting so much more than me. And I'm like, that is not normal though. So comparing yourself to what somebody else is doing is going to make you more anxious for sure. So try to put the blinders up when it comes to that.
Yeah. And it's really hard to do that because you're also, because the other side of this, which is a whole different episode, is the dealing with the care providers.
Yeah.
Because
we're going to talk about that in a couple
like,
weeks.
Yeah, that's a whole different episode. So stay tuned. We won't, but because people are like, I can't keep up. I can't, you can keep up. The problem is going to be over there with the overfeeding, because people are like, I can only pump 3 ounces. Okay, well, your baby's not going to be eating more than 3 or 4 ounces in a feeding.
Correct.
And if they are, they're being overfed. And that's not your problem. I mean, it's your problem to deal with, but it's not your body's problem. Your body's doing what it's supposed to be doing. Then you're going to have to you have to wait a couple of weeks for us to do that episode and then deal with the caregivers on that end.
But we will talk about that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Let's go back to the logistics of returning to work, because I think that is the piece where people get anxious because they don't know what to do. They don't know what to expect. And people want to know exactly what to do. So why don't should we take an ad break actually?
Oh, shoot.
And then
Yes,
do that when we get back?
Yeah. Yes, we should.
Okay, we'll be right back. Today's episode is brought to you by Larkin. Larkin is a mom-owned line of game-changing maternity and postpartum essentials designed to make your life easier and more comfortable. In particular, their Larkin X all-in-one nursing and hands-free pumping bra is a totally different take on the traditional nursing and pumping bra. The first of its kind, it's made without any irritating elastic, awkward holes, snaps, zippers, clips, or other hardware. So you can comfortably wear it day and night without ever having to change bras or to nurse or pump. Its buttery soft, stretchy fabric won't irritate or stick to your sensitive skin, and it is machine washable. And you're probably wondering how they make a nursing and pumping bra without any clips, zippers, or anything like that. And you have to check it out because it is super cool. And you can check it out, the Larkin X bra and the rest of their incredibly cozy must-haves at Shop Larkin. That's ShopLarken.com. Or you can check them out on Instagram at Larkin_shop and use code BADASS for 10% off of your order. Today's episode is also brought to you by Rumble Tough. The Rumble Tough Breeze is a top-of-the-line breast pump with a rechargeable battery that fits in the palm of your hand. The powerful motor lasts 2,000 plus hours and has a 2-year warranty. The memory button allows you to record your most effective pumping session and recall it every time you wish. Combine the Breeze with the Rumble Tough Go Cups, and you're pumping hands-free and on the go. Every Rumble Tough pump user qualifies for free pumping support with an IBCLC. Because they care, each pump comes with a manual handle kit to convert your electric pump into a manual pump at no extra cost. You should not have to figure it out alone. Let experts help you get the support you deserve. Additionally, every pump box includes a flange fit ruler, so you can determine which of the 15 flanges they offer will fit you best. Yes, nipple size matters. Check out their entire line at rumbletough.com. That's RUMBLETUFF. Rumbletough.com. And use code BADASS for 20% off of your purchase. And today's sponsors and their promo codes can be found in the show notes under this episode, wherever you're listening from, and also at badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com. At badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com. You will also find all of our other episodes and information about scheduling your very own one-on-one online lactation consultation with Dianne.
Yes. So what should we
Okay, so so I think that we should talk, we already started to talk about planning before. I mean, I've gotten messages from people saying like, I go back to work tomorrow and I'm not getting much milk. And like, this is not a situation you want to be in. You want to be in a situation where you have gotten a pump, you've gotten to know your pump, you've practiced with your pump ahead of time while you're still at home. And practicing with that pump and saving that milk. And then you're going to be determining how much milk, and this is where it gets a little complicated to do an episode on it because of course it's individual. But you're going to be deciding how much milk and how many ounces, per bottle or whatever to give to the caregiver. So you're going to be preparing, that you're going to be preparing the bottles ahead of time, dropping them off with the baby, and telling these people to just use that much, which we'll have to get into another time. And then while you're at work, you're going to be pumping and you're going to be using hands-on pumping. This is not a time where you're going to stick the pump on your breasts and then sit at your desk and type. You need to be expressing all of the milk out of your breast. And in order to do that, you have to be using hands-on pumping, which is the combination of breast massage and compression to help the pump get the milk out, because your pump is not like your baby. It can't just like get it all out by itself. It needs your help.
So one of the things too is, I try to tell people, start pumping. If you're going back to work at like, we'll say 8 weeks, you should really start pumping by about 4 weeks. And just like Abby had said, like just to be able to play around with the pump, see what works best for you, see what time of day works best for you. Just being able to like see what settings are good, like, making sure the flanges fit, all of the things. Maybe take the time to meet with a lactation consultant and go over all this stuff and talk about all of it. A lot of people are really concerned and worried about starting pumping or starting bottles too soon because they're afraid it's going to screw up their breastfeeding. And we can make like a healthy balance. It doesn't mean you have to like go overboard. But being able to kind of like get things started a little bit earlier might make you feel a little bit better. I would always suggest too, like you want to try a bottle before the day before, because some babies really do struggle to take those bottles and trying to figure out. It's very different sucking and swallowing when you are feeding at the breast, and sucking and swallowing when you're feeding by bottle is a very different process for these little babies. So some babies really do have a hard time going back and forth. And I know people are concerned about like nipple confusion, and they really get that in their head that if they offer too many bottles, the babies aren't going to breastfeed well. But we need to make sure your baby's going to take a bottle, and we need to make sure they're going to do that sooner than the day before you return to work.
Yeah.
So getting that started a little bit earlier, even if it's just once a week, once every couple days, like whatever works best for your family, you can do that. Always pump if you're missing a feeding. That's really important though, to always pump if you're missing a feeding. If you're really concerned with what is the best time of day for me to pump? How long should it, like all of those logistics, definitely talk to a lactation consultant. I have found that with most of the parents I work with, pumping first thing in the morning is better because you yield a little bit more milk. Your baby tends to hopefully go a longer stretch overnight without feeding. Your hormone levels that make your milk are higher overnight. So a lot of parents wake up in the morning, they're a little bit more full. It's easier to pump after you feed the baby. So that is usually when people find that they get the most amount of milk. If you're missing a feeding, you're giving a bottle that day, then you definitely have to pump if you're missing a feeding. When
some
you're
people
at
don't
work,
I was going to say, some people don't have a choice, of when to pump. And so
True.
If that's the time where you need to pump.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It'll be okay.
Right. You can pump at any, like I always say, if you can pump first thing in the morning but yeah, I definitely have parents that are like, I can't, I'm by myself. The baby needs attention. Fine. Like that's fine. Pump whenever you get a chance. It's fine. Anything works. You can pump at any point after a feeding. After a feeding is the best time because it's taking advantage of those higher prolactin levels, which keeps your milk higher. So that is the best time to pump, is right after a feeding. But I understand that that's not convenient for a lot of people either. But do what you can do. When you're at work, I usually try to talk to my families like directly about like, what's your schedule? Tell me what your schedule is going to be like. And if they're like, okay, I'm going to get up, I'm going to feed the baby, I'm going to drop the baby off at daycare at 7:30, I'm going to be at work at 8:00. And this is what the schedule looks like for the rest of the day. Okay. So what, in that kind of a situation, what I would say is, okay, if you can feed your baby at like 7:00 in the morning, and then you're dropping them off at daycare or whatever, that's when you leave for work or whatever happens, then you're probably going to want to pump by around 10:00. Mm-hmm. And that's not only because it's probably around the same time your baby's going to be getting a bottle, because that is that 3-hour time frame, but your body is going to be like, aren't we supposed to be feeding a baby right now? And you're going to start to get full and uncomfortable. So it is important to not ignore that.
And that is when milk production slows down.
Mm-hmm. When you ignore it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. We want to get the milk out so that your body's like, oh yeah, okay, we got to make more.
Mm-hmm. So definitely like at that point. And then I always say that at lunchtime, and then usually once in the afternoon. Always tell, and we'll bring this up again when we do the episode on daycare providers, or care providers, whoever happens to be watching your baby, make sure they do not feed your baby within an hour and a half or 2 hours of you coming home.
Mm-hmm.
Because
yeah, you hear that a lot. People are like, oh, my baby doesn't want a nurse when we got home. Come to find out that the baby had a bottle an hour ago.
Yeah. So you might need to really be very definitive about when you want your baby to get those bottles. And that's okay. You can do that. But like I said, we're going to talk about that more, coming up. When you are at work, or when you're planning to go back to work, it really helps to have a conversation with either your supervisor or, whoever, coworkers, whoever you feel like it's important, to make sure that they know that this is what your plan is. So that they know that you are going back, you're coming back, you're planning to pump. Some people say, oh yeah, there's other people at work that are pumping. We've got a room. It's great. And then I have some people that are like, I don't know if there's going to be a place for me. My schedule doesn't necessarily allow it. What if I can't pump at 10 a.m.? You got to just do the best you can, but if they know that you're coming back pumping and there are certain times that you need to pump because physically you will get uncomfortable and risk, plugged ducts and, mastitis and things like that from stretching out for too far. That's an important thing for them to know. Your boss does not know what you need. You have to tell them. You have to tell them what you need. And that can be hard and uncomfortable conversation to have. Do it in an email. I mean, however it works.
Yeah, that's fine. You just have to do it. You have to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you absolutely do.
You have to reach out to them. And
and doing it in advance, even doing it before you go out for maternity leave. It doesn't hurt to kind of plant that seed. Is there a place for me to pump when I come back?
That's what I did. I mean, I was in an extremely supportive environment. Well, I still decided not to come back because I was so overwhelmed, but and had the ability not to. But I talked about it, like my boss. My boss had never had children, and she was oddly tuned into. She was like, "Are you going to need to pump? Where are you going to? Let's clean out the refrigerator and have like a shelf that's just dedicated to your milk. We'll make sure that the bathroom that's by you will redirect everyone else to go to a different bathroom so that can just be where you're like storing your, bottles and where you're washing things." And that was like, I mean, she was almost like more prepared than me.
Wow.
I was like, oh my God, I don't even know what you're talking about. Yeah, these are things that you have to think about. And if you don't have a boss who's directing you, who maybe has had employees before, that was probably what happened, is that she's had employees before who went through this, but you might not. You might have a boss that's just like has no idea. And you have to be prepared to really break down the basics for them because they don't know.
Right.
If they're not addressing some things with you, maybe they're not being supportive, but try and give them some, nudges first before we decide that they're not being supportive, because they might just not know. Okay.
And again, I'm going to read this. Okay. Managerial and organizational support increases exclusive breastfeeding duration nearly twofold.
Totally.
With coworker support being essential in the decision to continue breastfeeding. So when you have coworkers that are like, oh, you got to go pump again. Like I had a client who her coworkers always had something to say to her. One of her coworkers said to her, and it was a male who didn't have any kids, said, can't you just pump before you come to work and have that be it?
Ugh.
And she was like,
seriously,
no,
people they just don't know.
Right. But they would question her all the time. And this was a unit that, like the place where she worked, where there was other people that had kids, that had babies, that they were exclusive pumpers. A lot of them did not, they chose to just pump, which was obviously their choice, and got a lot of milk and was just like, oh, can't you just pump like twice? And that's it. And she happened to be a parent who, no, she needed to pump like every 2 hours. And she would put a sign, she had her own office, but she would put a sign on a door. So, people would just walk in anyway, completely disregard the sign on the door. She was somebody who ended up leaving her job. So it's like, and she felt very unsupported. Like her first day back to work, they were like, oh, you don't have to breastfeed. It's okay if you don't make it. Like what? Like, here's a bagel we brought you for coming back to work. And by the way, don't feel like you need to continue on.
What's with workplaces and bagels? Bagels have become like the national, like, manipulative food.
Right. Like, they brought bagels for my first.
Look, there's a bagel. Look. Only companies that care about you give you bagels.
Right. But you don't have to worry about breastfeeding.
Oh.
Yeah. Flavored cream cheese.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They went all out.
But you don't have to, you really don't have to worry about breastfeeding. And this was something that was very, very important to her. And she felt completely unsupported with good reason.
Totally.
And they were like, oh, you have to pump that many times? I only had to pump twice during the workday. You have to pump that much? Why do you have to pump that much? That just makes you feel completely inadequate. And it's like, if you don't have something nice to say, shut up. It just does. It's not okay. Right. But supportive coworkers increase your breastfeeding duration twofold, or at least you would think that employers are going to want to retain their employees.
That's the bottom line, is that you retain employees, and it saves them money and resources, and they need to wrap their brains around it.
Yeah. So you're doing them a favor by coming back. And it doesn't make you a needy employee by saying, hey, you got a room for me? Do you have a place I can put my milk? Like, you're not, and there's things we can do. If there's not a refrigerator, because some people really feel like that's a deterrent to not have a place to put their milk. And they don't want to put it in the regular refrigerator with all the other people's lunches and all that stuff. And that's totally understandable. So there are some things that you can do. You can do, some people do a series chill. We've had them. They've been sponsors on the podcast several times. And that's a great way to just like collect all the milk. You can pump right into that thing and just, keep your milk. It keeps your milk cold for like 24 hours. So you can do something like that. You can bring a cooler if you want to and keep your milk in there. It stays fine. You can get a little refrigerator. They have very small refrigerators for very cheap. Like, when I say cheap, I mean like $50 or so, which may or may not be something that you want to do. And that's okay. But it doesn't have to be like a bigger refrigerator. It can be a small refrigerator. Over Christmas, I was at I think Marshall's or something like that. And when I was doing my Christmas shopping, and I saw this little refrigerator. It was cute. It held 6 cans. And I almost bought it for my son to have at his apartment in college. And then I was like, he'll fill it with beer. And that's the last thing I need is for him to have this little refrigerator filled with beer next to his bed or something.
Stash of beer just yet.
Right. I really don't need for this to happen to him. So I didn't end up getting it. And then my daughter actually for Christmas got a little refrigerator for her face cream and her little face stuff.
Uh-huh.
You could put little bottles of milk in those things and they're not that expensive. They're pretty affordable. So even just being creative and doing something like that, where you can just have this little refrigerator tucked in somewhere where nobody would even know it was there. If you don't want to use the one that's there, or you might even be able to get them to just comp you one, be like, can't you just $50 me, whatever, some petty cash or whatever, come on. Yeah. The pumping, the paid pump breaks. I don't even know what to say about that. Because
we also have an episode coming up about the new pump law.
yeah, we do. Yeah, and which is a United States
coming
thing.
Up with information that you need right now, but you have to wait until later to get it.
Oh my God, because we're not
just
prepared.
Kidding. We're just no, we are prepared. Yeah. We just want to talk about with you. This episode is about you being at work.
Yes,
and what to do.
What else you got?
Well, okay, so people are at work, they're pumping, they're doing hands-on pumping. Maybe it's been a few days. What are we going? A lot of people will say, I don't know. I think my milk supply might be tanking. There might be some changes that you notice right in the beginning as you make this transition.
Yes. one of the things that happens is that we know that your body starts to settle in again right around that 3-month mark. And when I say settle in, I mean that like milk starts to regulate again right around that 3-month mark. And a lot of people are finding that they're going back to work somewhere within a few weeks around that time. So yes, your supply might start to, you might notice some changes in how much milk you're pumping. Like I said, in one of the other more recent episodes, you might find that you get your period back sooner too, because you're doing more pumping. And we know that your milk supply is going to dip a little bit with returning to work or with your period because of hormonal fluctuations. So that might also cause a little dip in supply when you're pumping at work. That all that stuff is manageable. We can get past that with pumping, with increasing pumping. A lot of people that are pumping at work don't want to pump at home or don't want to pump on the weekends. You might have to incorporate something like that because it is important to make sure that you are maintaining a supply. And it's harder to maintain a supply when you are doing mainly pumping. Breastfeeding as much as you can when you're with the baby is really important too. Breastfeed as much as you can when you're with the baby.
And through the night.
Yes.
This is not a time where we're going to be creating like boundaries at night or where we want the baby to sleep. We're trying to put rice cereal in the bottom. Well, we're never going to do that. We're never going to do that.
No, don't ever do that. Yeah.
Well, bed sharing is going to be your friend because it's going to give your baby free access to breastfeeding, which is going to help your supply stay nice and hefty at this time.
Yes.
And that's just a lot easier than getting up and going down the hallway. And your baby's going to breastfeed more if they are near you. That is a fact.
Yeah. One of the other things, you might find that your breast size is changing a little bit as well. The longer you are, nursing your baby, your body is starting to kind of get a little bit back to like, pre-pregnancy size. And you might find that you need to change your flange sizes again because things are a little bit different. Changing your pump parts regularly. If you are pumping several times a day, you really need to change out those pump parts like monthly. And that can make a huge difference. So flange size, something that you might need to look at, and changing out pump parts as well. If you're not doing that already, make sure you are incorporating that about once a month. And some insurances will cover that for you. So you just need to kind of like maybe make a couple calls or, find out if you can get that covered.
We also do have an episode on how to pump more milk. There's tips in there on how to pump more milk, which is just, maybe you don't need to pump more milk, but you want to make sure that you're pumping efficiently so that you're getting as much milk out as possible to keep that breast milk supply up nicely. I know we're referring to a lot of different episodes, but like this is not a one episode conversation. Each one of these things that we're talking about is a whole other conversation. So hopefully we just gave you a bit of an idea of like what your day is going to look like with returning to work.
Yeah. And then there's going to be more episodes coming up about that too.
There is. So we should maybe, I should create more work for myself by saying this. Create like a little episode packet of like returning to work that includes like, this, like what your day is going to look like, and then dealing with caregivers and da-da-da. I don't know. And I don't know where we would put it, but
it'd be a good Patreon thing, honestly. Yeah. So we'll have to look into that stuff. Yep.
Okay. Anything else?
I don't think so.
So now I know people are like, but wait, what about this and what about that? Get on your email. Send us an email. If there's like a million emails, if everybody is now starting to send an email, like we might not respond to every single one of them because, time. But like, if you have questions, if you have things that are like, but what about this? But what about that? Let us know so we can formulate like another follow-up episode because we don't always know exactly what your questions are. We just know kind of what we're going to say. And then if you tell us like you need clarification on certain things or whatever, we'll just do another episode.
Yeah, because every situation's different.
Every situation is different. Yeah,
not have been able to touch on.
All these topics need to be revisited anyway, so we're going to just keep revisiting them.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's badassbreastfeedingpodcast@gmail.com. And like I said, I just because sometimes Diane and I'll realize that there's an email that hasn't been answered, but Diane and I have had like 10 conversations about it. We just didn't tell you about it.
Yeah.
We really do try to respond to all the emails, but I think that sometimes maybe some slip through.
Yeah, it happens.
It happens to the best of us, but we do read them all, and we do incorporate all of them. So anyway, thanks for listening.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.